You're listening to The Moose and the Loose, your 10 minutes action-packed financial podcast with your host, Mikey Hu. Hey, what's up, Market Moose? Mike from The Moose on the Loose. Welcome to Retirement Friday. Today, we are going to talk about the fact that maybe we are too conservative when we play around with the expected return. And what I mean by that is, it's kind of weird. At the beginning of my career as a financial planner back in 2007, I've seen so many plans, like financial plans with expected returns of like 8, 9, 10%. And I mean, we've been told by the Institute of Financial Planning in Quebec, use more conservative numbers. Those are kind of crazy. And then 2008 happened, and then you see, oh wow, the past 5 years return kind of been wiped out, and it took a while before you could have seen even a 100% equity portfolio to generate that 8, 9, 10%. And this discussion was also sparked into Retirement Loop as of late. And that was a very interesting discussion here, mostly because we all have our perspective when we do our financial plan, right? So some will be super aggressive, some will be super conservative, and I wanted to just discuss that a little bit more, because we had the discussion with the if you look at the index chart. So the index chart will show you the total return of several markets and assets type throughout several years, right? So it's great to have that perspective of what happened over the past 75 years, right? And if you have invested in the S&P 500 for a very long time, your chances are you're going to generate more than 10%, or at least 10% return, annualized return, which is kind of great, right? It's huge. It's double digit over time. So it means that every 7 years your portfolio will double. On the other side, what we suggest at Retirement Loop, and this is how I built my own plan, is actually using FP Canada suggestions, which is roughly 6.57% max on equities. So where do you go from that 10-ish% from investing purely in the market versus 6.5 with suggested as FP Canada? And then some people will say, oh, I'm just going to go one notch more conservative because I don't believe the market will continue that way. So I'm going to use 5% for a full equity portfolio, just to be on the safe side, right? And I get this. I mean, you're planning for the next 20, 30, 40 years, and you certainly don't want to wake up at the age of 78 almost running out of money. So you want to be on the safe side, and that I get the idea, but maybe that 5% is actually a very bad way to approach expected returns. So here's how expected return works. So you plan for decades, right? So it's a really long-term average. You cannot know what's going to happen in 2042 when we're in 2025, right? So it's impossible, but having a very long period of time like this, you go a little bit on the conservative side, it's a lot easier. Because if you look at the last decade, for example, between 2000 and 2010, well, between 2000 and 2010 on the US market, it was almost like a 0% total return, mostly because we had two major crises: the tech bubble that started in 2000, and then in 2008, only 8 years after the first bubble, we had another crisis. So in 2010, the market has not fully recovered. So if you put that into mind, you would be tempted to say, yeah, but if the next lost decade is between 25 and 2035, what am I going to do? But here's the thing: if you add some diversification to that, and you invested in other markets in the US market, and then maybe you have some fixed income, and maybe you have a cash reserve, well, your return was a little bit better than this. And then if you put that over at 30 years horizon, then it's completely different. So this is why when you use expected return, you cannot just focus on one bad period. So similar to, I keep hearing whenever there's inflation moving up a little bit, I keep hearing about, oh, stagflation is coming. Dude, stagflation, the last time it happened was in the 70s. All right. So, and the moment that it happened before that was never. So yes, it's a real thing, but what's the likelihood? It's like projecting that we're gonna have COVID every 3 years, while the last time it happened was like the Spanish flu, freaking like 75 years ago, right? So keep that in mind. Slow down a little bit. It makes a lot more sense. When you think about the expected return, there are two components to that. You have your investment returns, but you also have inflation. So now some people will start with that 5% conservative return, like ultra conservative, and then we'll have a 3% inflation rate on top of that, just to be, again, on the safe side. So when you think about that, it's like 5 minus 3, you have a net investment return of 2%. And the major problem here is you will live poorly. You will limit yourself. You will like grab every pennies and probably say no to amazing trips or amazing activities, or you will not hit the items on your bucket list just because you used the wrong numbers, which for me is even worse, in my opinion, than actually running out of money at the age of 80. I would rather enjoy life and running out of money than doing the opposite and not enjoying life and then dying with like $3, $4, $5 million at the age of 85 in my bank account. I'm sure my children have another vision about that, but that's still right. So if you compare the three expected return that we discussed already, if you go with FP Canada, it's like 6.5 returns on the investment, 2.1 for the inflation. So your net investment return is roughly 4.5%, right? Index would be like 11% returns and then 3.5 for the inflation, because we had like period of inflation, of high inflation in the 80s, for example, that would actually increase the average. But still, you would have a net at 7.5%. So 11 moins 3.5, that's 7.5. So when you look at those three different scenarios in your financial projections, you have one at 2% net investment return, another one at 4.5, another one at 7.5. I mean, it's three completely different lifestyle. Literally, it's really the difference between hitting your bucket list and like living poorly for nothing. So now, what's the solution? Where do we go with this? Because now I just drew up like a bunch of numbers. Which one is good? How can you make like a logical aspect of that? Well, what I would do if I were you, and what I did actually, so not financial advice, but just like a way to do it is, what I do is I do one scenario with FP Canada, 6.5 and then 2.1 for inflation. So I have a net investment of like 4.5-ish, right? So that's my conservative scenario. But then what I try to do is always to spend the maximum out of this as much as I can, so I can maximize and aim to die with zero. Because my thinking here is, if I plan with 6.5 and I expect to die, let's say at the age of 90, with $0 left. Well, first, if I live past this year, well, I will just rely on government pension, which would suck, definitely. But at the age of 90, maybe I'm not going to need that much anymore. And actually, the bulk of like the good years, the go-go years of my retirement would have been awesome. The other thing I'm thinking here is, chances are I'm going to generate more than 6.5. Like that's pretty, like the odds are really, really good, actually. So then I have this interesting room that will be created each year that I retire, and I get a better returns from my investment. So the key here is to keep the plan conservative, but every year that you retire, if you have a very good year, why don't you just withdraw a little bit more money on that year to treat yourself and do an extra item on your bucket list? Because you're not lacking of time at this point. You have like all the time in the world. You have the money, and the only like tricky point here is health, right? So if you are healthy, you have time, you have money, you're in your 60s or early 70s and you're still in top shape, well, that's a good thing. Like the market is up, like last year the market was up like more than 20%. Hey, it's probably time to treat yourself and go on an extra cruise or an extra trip or extra activity or whatever you want to do with your money. Like that's up to you. But by running those calculations each year, you can have like your budget aligned with a conservative scenario, and then you have that pocket that you can open in this budget where when the market is up more, you can get a little bit more money and then having a lot more fun with it. So that's kind of like having an agile budget and benefiting, like enjoying retirement to its maximum. If you want more trick about enjoying retirement, if you want to learn more about income products, I do have a free newsletter about retirement. You can subscribe at retirementloop.ca. So you go there, retirementloop.ca, and you just click on the button to join the free newsletter. You're going to have like free tips and more discussion about retirement there over there. So retirementloop, that's LOOP.ca. I'll see you there. In the meantime, we're going to talk again on Monday. And before that, don't forget to stay invested. Hey, welcome to the disclaimer. If you're listening to The Moose and the Loose, you cannot really expect me to give you buy or sell recommendation or financial advice, right? You're here for fun, you're here for information and some entertainment. But I am not your financial advisor, I am not your broker, so therefore I'm not liable if you're losing money after listening to the podcast. If you're looking for some advice, go see a professional. If not, you can enjoy the show and do your due diligence after it.